Her sister threw a housewarming party on the same day as her daughter's funeral and called it a minor event. Her name is Marissa Hayes, and this is the story of how she lost her daughter and her family in the same week. Her daughter Ava was only 7 years old when she died from leukemia. Ava was her whole world. Losing her felt like losing a piece of her soul. Marissa planned a quiet funeral to say goodbye. She sent messages to her family, letting them know the service would be held on Thursday at 11 a.m. Only her sister, Leona, replied with a short message. Got it. No kind words, no support, just that. On the day of the funeral, Marissa stood by Ava's small white coffin, her heart completely broken. She looked out at the front row, expecting to see her family there. It was empty. Not one of them had come. At first, she thought something must have happened. Maybe they were stuck in traffic. Maybe they were running late. But the truth hit her later that night. Her cousin posted photos on social media. Her mother, aunts, and Leona were all at Leona's brand new house, smiling and holding wine glasses. The caption said, "Leona's housewarming party." Marissa couldn't believe what she was seeing. While she buried her daughter, her family had been celebrating. She called her mother, hoping for some explanation, some apology. Instead, her mother told her she was being dramatic. "It was just a small event," she said. "You shouldn't take it so personally." Leona sent her a message later. "I'm sorry the timing was bad. You're not the only one who's sad, Marissa." But none of them had shown up. None of them had been there for Ava, or for her. Marissa sat in silence, heart shattered. These were the people she had leaned on her whole life, and now they had shown her exactly where she stood. What made it worse? Leona's new house used to belong to their grandmother. It was Ava's favorite place in the world. Marissa had paused the transfer while Ava was sick. Now she realized something important. Legally, the house was still in her name. She remembered how her fingers trembled as she typed the message. Funeral is Thursday, 11 a.m. Simple, short, director. She didn't have the strength for anything more. Her daughter was gone, and Marissa Hayes could barely breathe, let alone explain. She had copied her whole family into the group chat. Her mother, her sister Leona, her 2 cousins, her aunt. She didn't expect flowers or grand gestures, just their presence, just the warmth of their arms around her as she said goodbye to her 7-year-old child. Only Leona replied. 1 message, 2 words. Got it. No. I'm so sorry. No. We're here for you. No. How are you holding up? Just those cold, clipped words, like she was confirming a hair appointment. Marissa stared at the screen for a long time, hoping someone else would respond. Her mum, maybe. Her aunt, who used to babysit Ava. Anyone. But the chat stayed silent. She thought maybe they were in shock too. Maybe grief made them slow to react. She was wrong. Thursday morning came like a nightmare she couldn't wake from. She dressed Ava in the soft yellow dress she loved, the one with tiny embroidered daisies. She tucked her favorite stuffed bunny beside her. The funeral home was quiet, filled with the kind of silence that felt heavy. As people trickled in, neighbors, Ava's schoolteacher, a few friends, Marissa kept looking toward the front row. Empty. She waited until the very last moment, but the people who mattered most, her mother, her sister, the family she had grown up believing would never abandon her, they never walked in. She sat alone. When it was her turn to speak, she did it with a clenched heart. She told stories about Ava's laugh, her love for animals, how she once rescued a dying butterfly and cried when it didn't make it. She choked on every word, but spoke them anyway, because Ava deserved that. After the service, she stepped outside to get a breath of air. That's when she saw it. A photo. Smiling faces. Clinking wine glasses. Her mother and Leona posing in front of a giant balloon arch that read, "Welcome home." The caption was cheerful. First night in the new house. So grateful for family time. Marissa stared at the screen, numb. The timestamp, 11:14 a.m., exactly when Ava's tiny white coffin was being lowered into the ground. Later that night, she sat on the edge of her bed, the funeral dress still clinging to her like wet skin. She scrolled back through the chat, wondering if she had somehow imagined it all. But there it was. Her message. Funeral is Thursday, 11 a.m. And Leona's reply. Got it. She clicked on the photo again, zooming in on her mother's face. Her mother, whose hands had once braided Marissa's hair before school. Her mother, who used to carry Ava on her hip and sing lullabies. Now, she was sipping wine, grinning like she didn't have a care in the world, while her granddaughter was being buried. She texted Leona, You knew today was the funeral. Read. No reply. She tried again. How could you throw a party today of all days? This time, a response came. It was planned months ago. I couldn't change it. Life doesn't stop for one event. One event. That's what she called it. Her daughter's funeral. One event. The texts kept coming. I didn't think you'd want a crowd. Mom was already staying with me for the party. Honestly, I thought it would be more intimate if it was just you. Each message hit her like a slap. Marissa felt her chest tighten. She didn't reply. What could she say? That their absence had hollowed her, that she now questioned whether they ever truly cared about her or Ava. The next morning, her cousin posted a group photo from the party. Everyone was there, even relatives she hadn't seen in years. Her mum wore a new blouse. Leona's kids were playing in the background. There were gift bags lined up on the counter. Marissa stared at the screen and whispered aloud, "Was I ever family to them?" She looked around her home, now too quiet. Ava's drawings still hung on the fridge. Her tiny shoes were lined up neatly by the door, just as they had been the day she was rushed to the hospital for the last time. Marissa had left them there, unable to move them. Tears spilled over, silent and steady. She wasn't crying just for Ava anymore. She was crying for the betrayal, the abandonment, the cruel reality that some people you love will choose comfort over compassion. Days passed, then weeks. Her family never reached out. No one asked how she was. No one sent a card. She tried once more to call her mum. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. She didn't leave a message. Instead, she stood up, walked to Ava's room, and gently opened the door. It still smelled like her, vanilla shampoo and crayons. She sat on the edge of the bed and picked up Ava's favorite storybook. Marissa began to read, to no one, and yet to someone, because in that moment, she understood something. Grief had taken her daughter, but betrayal had taken her family, and there was no coming back from that. She read until her voice broke. Then she let the silence take over again. The house Leona moved into was once owned by Marissa's grandmother, a place filled with memories and love. It was the very house Ava, Marissa's daughter, had always adored. Ava used to say, "I hope we always get to come here," her small voice filled with hope and joy. Marissa had promised her that they would, but now the house felt different, like a place frozen in time, yet changed without her. Marissa had paused the process of transferring ownership while she was consumed by Ava's illness, caught in the whirlwind of hospital visits and treatments. Now, after losing her daughter, she learned the deed was still in her name. The legal paper showed that the house still belonged to her, but someone else was living there. Leona. Marissa stared at the quiet yellow house, the freshly painted door, the colourful balloons tied to the porch, and the smell of fresh flowers planted in the garden made her feel like a stranger in her own past. Leona had moved in without telling her. She had taken over the home that held Ava's happiest memories. The drive to the house had been slow. Marissa's mind raced as she approached. Every corner of that place reminded her of Ava. She remembered Ava's laughter echoing through the rooms, the way she ran barefoot across the yard, chasing butterflies. That house wasn't just a building to Ava, it was magic. Now, it was a house full of silence. Marissa felt the weight of the loss settle deep in her chest again. She got out of the car slowly, her feet crunching on the gravel driveway. The swing Ava loved had been removed. New furniture was arranged on the porch. The small garden that Ava once helped her grandmother tend had been replanted, but the flowers were different. It was as if the house was alive, but missing a piece. Missing Ava. As Marissa walked toward the porch, a small white envelope caught her eye. It was tucked between the railings. Her name was written on it, in Leona's neat handwriting. She hesitated, but then reached for it. Inside was a short note. "I know you loved this house. I didn't ask because I thought you wouldn't care anymore. Everything changed. You changed. We all lost something. I didn't think you'd want it. I didn't think you'd come back. Leona." The words stung. No apology, no invitation, just cold honesty. Marissa sank onto the porch step, clutching the letter. She remembered the promise Ava made. "I hope we always get to come here." How could Leona just take it away? How could she live there, celebrating while Marissa was still buried in grief? That night, Marissa couldn't sleep. The house, the letter, the memories, they all swirled through her mind. She opened her laptop and looked up the ownership papers. Her name was still on the deed. The house was legally hers. This gave her a strange mix of emotions: relief, confusion, and a tiny spark of hope. Maybe the house was a piece of Ava that hadn't been lost after all. Marissa sat quietly, thinking of what to do next. The house was hers, not just on paper, but in her heart. Ava's spirit was there, woven into the walls and the garden. She wasn't ready to give up on that. The next day, Marissa called a lawyer to understand her options. She wanted to know how to protect the house, how to make sure Ava's memory lived on there. While waiting for the meeting, she drove past the house again. This time, she saw Leona in the garden, tending the flowers. Marissa's heart. They had shared so much pain, but they had grown apart. Maybe it was time to find a way to bridge the distance. The house had been a place of joy for Ava. It could be that again, if Marissa and Leona could find a way to heal together. For now, Marissa held onto the memory of her daughter's laughter in the house that Ava loved, knowing that some bonds, even broken, could still be mended. After the funeral, Marissa sat across from her lawyer, Mr. Calvin Traynor, in his quiet office filled with leather-bound books and framed degrees. The air smelled faintly of coffee and old paper, but Marissa barely noticed. Her mind was locked on one thing: the house. She looked at Calvin and said softly, "The house. It's still mine, right?" Calvin nodded, pushing his glasses up his nose. "Yes, Marissa. The deed is in your name. Your sister, Leona, has no legal claim unless you transfer it or give her permission." Relief washed over Marissa, mixed with a sharp ache. The house was hers, but Leona was living in it, celebrating life as if nothing had happened, as if Ava's memory could be erased with a smile and a glass of wine. Marissa swallowed the lump in her throat. "What can I do?" Calvin leaned forward. "You can start the eviction process, but it takes time and needs to be handled carefully. You don't want to give Leona any chance to contest or complicate things." Marissa nodded, her jaw tightening. "I want to do this quietly. No big fights, no family drama in public." Calvin smiled gently. "Smart. The less noise, the better. We'll prepare everything carefully and make sure you have all your legal ground covered before any action." For the first time since losing Ava, Marissa felt a spark of control. She wasn't going to let Leona take what rightfully belonged to her and to Ava's memory without a fight. But this wouldn't be loud or bitter. It would be quiet, a plan for justice beneath the surface. Over the next few weeks, Marissa gathered documents, emails, and proof of ownership. She reviewed hospital bills and photos of Ava in the house, things that reminded her of what the home had meant to their family. Each piece of paper was a thread connecting her to the past she refused to lose. Leona didn't reach out. No calls, no messages. Marissa wasn't sure if it was because Leona felt guilty or if she simply didn't care. The silence from her sister stung almost as much as the betrayal. One afternoon, Marissa met with Calvin again. "Everything's in order," he said, handing her a folder thick with legal papers. "We're ready to start the eviction, but I recommend one more thing. Send a formal notice first. That's required by law, and it shows you're acting in good faith." Marissa agreed. She wrote the notice carefully, keeping the tone calm but firm. She mailed it to the house and waited. Days passed with no response. Marissa's heart ached as she drove by the house. She saw Leona in the garden, smiling and chatting with friends. The house was filled with laughter again, laughter that didn't belong to Ava or her family, but to strangers who didn't understand the history inside those walls. Marissa kept her distance, her eyes tracing the corners where Ava had once played. It felt like walking through a dream where everything was wrong. One night, Marissa sat on her porch, looking at the stars. The weight of grief and anger pressed down on her, but beneath it all was a quiet determination. She wasn't just fighting for a house. She was fighting for Ava's place in the world. The eviction notice arrived one morning. Leona read it with a mix of shock and anger. She called Marissa, voice sharp and bitter. "How could you do this?" Leona demanded. "That house means nothing to you now. You didn't want it before, and you sure don't want it now. Why are you making this fight?" Marissa's voice was steady. "Because it means everything to me. Because Ava loved that house, and I promised her we'd always have it. It's not just a building, it's a memory, a part of her." There was silence on the other end. Then Leona sighed deeply, the anger giving way to something quieter, more painful. "I didn't know how to say it," she said finally. "I thought you were gone already. I thought you didn't want any part of this family or the past." Marissa felt tears rise. "I'm here. I'm not gone. And I want to protect what Ava loved." The call ended without answers, but something had shifted. The legal process moved slowly, but steadily. Marissa stayed patient, knowing that rushing would only give Leona more reasons to resist. Calvan handled every step professionally, keeping Marissa informed but shielding her from unnecessary conflict. Meanwhile, Marissa began visiting the house when no one was home. She walked through the rooms softly, touching the walls, remembering Ava's tiny hands reaching up to hold hers. She planted new flowers in the garden, the same types Ava had loved. Each act was a quiet claim on the space, a way to keep Ava's spirit alive. One afternoon, as Marissa was tending the flowers, Leona appeared at the gate. There was no anger this time, only exhaustion. "I don't want to fight," Leona said quietly. Maybe we could find a way to share the house." For Ava, Marissa looked at her sister, the woman who had once been family, but now felt like a stranger. The pain was still there, but so was the hope. "Maybe," Marissa whispered, "for Ava." The house that once belonged to their grandmother, and that Ava had loved so dearly, was more than just a place now. It was a symbol of family, broken, but not beyond repair. Marissa knew the road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in a long while, she felt something she hadn't in months: hope. The quiet plan for justice was no longer just about a house. It was about healing, forgiveness, and keeping Ava's memory alive in the only way she could. With police present, Marissa serves Leona the eviction notice. Leona stood frozen on the front porch, a garden hose still running in her hand, soaking the ground. Her eyes darted between Marissa and the officers as realization slowly settled in. One of the officers calmly explained the situation. The property was legally under Marissa's name, and this was an official eviction. They were here only to maintain peace. Marissa remained composed, holding the paperwork firmly, but without triumph. Her voice was steady as she said, "This isn't sudden, Leona. The paperwork has been filed for weeks. You've been served legally." Leona's mouth opened and closed before any words came. Then the explosion began. "You're joking," she snapped, snatching the paper from Marissa's hand. "You're actually kicking me out of Grandma's house? The house Ava loved. You're doing this now? After everything?" Neighbors began to peek through blinds and screen doors, drawn by the raised voices and the quiet presence of the police cruiser parked nearby. Marissa didn't flinch under the growing attention. She had nothing to hide. Leona's voice rose higher, shrill with disbelief and fury. "This is revenge. You're punishing me for not going to the funeral. That's what this is." Marissa's eyes didn't waver. She didn't shout back. She didn't argue. Instead, she spoke softly, just loud enough to be heard over her sister's outburst. "No," she said. "This is consequence." For a second, silence fell over the porch. Even Leona seemed thrown off by the calm weight of those words. But rage quickly filled the vacuum. "You're heartless," she screamed, stepping closer. "You're sick. I needed this place. You know I've been struggling. You waited for the worst moment just to throw me out." One of the officers stepped between them, gently raising a hand. "Mom," he said to Leona, "you have 30 days to vacate the property. You can dispute this through proper legal channels if you choose, but you can't remain here past the deadline. Any threats or refusal to comply will be documented." Leona turned her back and stormed into the house, slamming the screen door behind her so hard the hinges rattled. Inside, she could be heard shouting to someone on the phone, possibly their mother, maybe a friend. Marissa didn't listen. She stepped back, feeling the pressure in her chest start to ease. Not satisfaction, not relief, just space, quiet, still space where grief had once suffocated. The house stood behind her, unchanged but somehow different. No longer a stolen space, no longer a symbol of betrayal. Now it was just a home waiting to be reclaimed. It had once echoed with Ava's laughter, her tiny footsteps, her drawings taped to the refrigerator. This was where she had smiled the most, even when she was sick. This was where she had once said, "I hope we always get to come here." Marissa had thought about those words every day since the funeral. She walked slowly back to her car, past the neighbors still watching from their windows. Some nodded, some turned away. She didn't care. Her grief was not a performance, and neither was her decision. Back in her vehicle, she sat for a moment with her hands in her lap. A text came through from her lawyer, just confirming that the notice had been officially delivered and the case was closed unless contested. She typed a short reply, "Thank you." Then she looked once more at the house. It would take time to restore what had been lost, both in wood and memory. The walls still held pieces of Ava, The porch still bore the faint chalk lines of hopscotch games from summers ago. There was pain in every corner, but also pieces of joy. This wasn't revenge. It was the beginning of a return. The fallout would come. Marissa knew that. Her mother would call. The family would whisper. Leona would shout across social media, twisting the story to make herself the victim. But the truth was quiet, and Marissa had chosen it. No drama, no retribution, just consequence and closure. Reviewing her financial records, Marissa finds her mother had siphoned money monthly for bills, but used it to finance Leona's party. She also learns Leona told Ava's school she was the legal guardian in order to receive donation funds. Marissa stared at her laptop screen, blinking slowly as the numbers glared back at her. She'd finally brought herself to look through her bank statements, something she had avoided since Ava's passing. Grief had clouded everything, her thoughts, her decisions, and clearly her awareness. Line after line showed small monthly withdrawals labeled family help or utilities, all traced back to her mother's account. She remembered those calls, her mother saying things like, "You've got a lot on your plate, let me take care of some bills," or Leona's struggling, "We'll pay you back soon." At the time, Marissa hadn't questioned it. She was exhausted, mentally and emotionally drained, focused entirely on Ava's treatments and hospital stays. Trust came easily when she didn't have the strength to question it. Now she saw the truth. Her mother had been withdrawing money without asking, over months, quietly and consistently. When she dug deeper into spending reports, it became clear those funds hadn't gone to any bills. They had paid for Leona's extravagant housewarming party, catering, decorations, even the wine. Marissa's hands shook as she closed the banking app. Just when she thought she had uncovered the worst, another discovery knocked the air from her lungs. She had emailed Ava's school to inquire about a small memorial she wanted to sponsor in her daughter's name. The administrator responded warmly, but mentioned something odd. How grateful they were for Aunt Leona's help after Ava's passing, especially how she had stepped in as Ava's guardian during the final months. Guardian? That was impossible. Marissa had never signed over any rights. Ava had been with her always. She contacted the school office and requested documentation. The scanned form arrived within the hour, and there it was, Leona's signature, forged under Marissa's name, granting temporary guardianship. It had allowed her to accept donation checks from the school community, funds meant to help Ava and her mother through a difficult time. Marissa sat in silence, unable to speak or move. The betrayal cut deeper than she'd ever thought possible. Leona hadn't just been absent during Ava's worst moments. She had used those moments for personal gain. She had taken Ava's memory and twisted it into an opportunity. Marissa didn't cry this time. Her eyes were dry, her jaw locked tight. The pain had shifted into something sharper, clarity. This wasn't one bad choice or a moment of selfishness. This was a pattern, a network of lies and exploitation. Her mother, her sister, the people who were supposed to stand beside her in love, had built something cruel behind her back. She printed out every document, every transaction. She collected evidence and labeled folders. This wasn't for revenge, it was for protection. If they had gone this far once, they could do it again. And Marissa was done being silent. She had already evicted Leona from the house Ava loved. Now she knew that wasn't enough. There would be legal action, restitution, full accountability, because love without truth isn't love at all. And Marissa was done trusting lies. Marissa files a civil suit, blocks family access to her and Ava's online memorials, and donates the house to a non-profit that provides housing to parents of terminally ill children. She receives support from Ava's teachers, friends' parents, and even strangers. It took Marissa weeks to make her decision, but once she did, there was no turning back. She filed a civil suit against her mother and Leona. Fraud, misuse of funds, forgery. Every document she had gathered was submitted through her lawyer. The case wasn't about the money anymore. It was about truth, about standing up for herself and for Ava, for every moment that was stolen while she grieved, while she trusted. She also took back control of Ava's online presence. The memorial website she had created after Ava's death had become a place of peace, a space to remember her daughter's smile, drawings, and the little journal entries she'd made during treatment. But after the funeral, she had discovered her sister and mother had used it to promote Leona's party photos and fundraisers in Ava's name. That stopped immediately. With a few clicks, Marissa blocked every family member who had betrayed her. She changed passwords, secured accounts, and made sure Ava's memory could no longer be used as a tool for personal gain. Then, she made her most powerful move yet. The house, her grandmother's home, the one Ava had once danced through barefoot and beaming, had become a place of tension and deceit. Rather than keep it or sell it, Marissa chose something different. She donated it to a non-profit that provided housing to parents of terminally ill children traveling for treatment. Families like hers, parents who sat beside hospital beds for weeks or months, hoping for one more birthday, one more laugh. She handed over the keys with a quiet smile, imagining the walls filled with love again. Ava would have liked that. At first, she braced herself for backlash, and it came. Angry messages from her mother, emotional voicemails from Leona, even some judgment from extended relatives. But louder than all of that was the support. Ava's teachers sent her handwritten notes. Parents from Ava's class dropped flowers at her door. Strangers who read about her donation online sent kind messages, sharing their own stories of loss and resilience. For the first time in months, Marissa felt something stronger than grief. She felt grounded. She had been broken, yes, but now she was building something new, on her terms, with love, with purpose, with power. Months later, Marissa hosts a weekly art night for grieving parents. What began as a quiet gathering in her living room has grown into a space filled with soft voices, shared tears, and gentle laughter. Parents sit with paintbrushes and pastels, not to create perfect art, but to heal. Marissa guides them with calm and kindness, offering tea, tissues, and hope. One evening, as the session ends, a little girl wanders over to Marissa and presses a folded piece of paper into her hand. "You're brave like my mommy," she says softly, before skipping back to her dad. Marissa unfolds the paper. It's a crayon drawing, her holding a bright yellow sun in one hand and a heart in the other. Tears prick her eyes, but this time, they don't fall from pain. They fall from connection. Later that week, she visits Ava's grave. The sky is pale, the breeze warm. She kneels beside the stone, placing a small bundle of fresh daisies, Ava's favorite. For a while, she says nothing. Then, in a whisper, she speaks. "They chose themselves. I chose you, and now I choose me." Her voice is steady, not bitter, not broken, just clear. As she stands to leave, a calm peace settles over her. The road ahead isn't perfect, but it's hers. Every step, every boundary, every act of love she gives, to herself, to others, will be made with intention. Marissa is no longer surviving. She is living, on her own terms. Hey besties, if this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, drop a comment, and hit that subscribe button. Sharing is caring. Send it to someone who needs it. Love you always. Bye.